Let's go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for this Education Transformation 2020 presentation, Strategies for Maintaining Instructor Presence Through Using Video. My name is Kayla Elkin and I'm on the marketing team here at Hawks Learning. Our speaker today is Professor Stephen Weber. Professor Stephen Weber is an online English instructor at the University of Maryland's Global Campus. He is the author of Deep Free Writing and Writing from the Inside Out, and he has been teaching virtually since 2010. We are so excited that Professor Weber is here to share his experience and insight with us today. We do have a large audience and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible, so please enter those into the Q&A as we go, and we'll save questions for Professor Weber for the end of the presentation. On that note, I will hand it over to you, Professor Weber. The floor is yours.
Great. Cool. Well, first off, I just want to say thanks to everybody for showing up on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon for the presentation. And I always like to get a sense for where everyone's calling from. So if you wouldn't mind, there's the chat box, the chat feature of Zoom. Like if you could just enter where you're calling from, and if you don't mind, your discipline, if you're an instructor, if you teach asynchronous or live classes, it's just very cool to get a sense for where everybody's from. Yeah, we get people from all over. And yeah, it does. It gives me a sense for like the community that we have here. So, and inevitably there's going to be somebody from on the other side of the world. I just know. So. Cool. Thanks for sharing this. Yeah. So I'm Stephen, and I'm going to be going through maintaining instructor presence through the use of video. I teach English and I teach asynchronously largely, and one of the main challenges that we face is how to really establish and how to maintain a sense of presence and community in the classroom, especially when it's not a live classroom, whenever it's an asynchronous classroom. This presentation will go for probably 20 minutes and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. And so whatever the post-COVID world looks like for higher education, it's going to be different. Things are changing. We're experiencing huge shifts. And my feeling is we really need to embrace this change as an opportunity no matter what the future brings. Even as a general trend, learning is transitioning from physical to virtual very rapidly. And at present, we're embracing conference calling as a way of facilitating this, meeting instructional needs that way. I mean, it definitely makes it possible, but it does pose some new challenges. There are some things that we take for granted when we're in the physical classroom that are hard to replicate, or it requires a creative approach when we're meeting virtually. Some things like, how does the instructor read the audience virtually versus in a physical room? When you're in a physical classroom, it kind of just happens automatically. You get a sense for where everybody is. What do we do about underserved learners without the access to the latest technology or maybe the best bandwidth? What's the digital equivalent to something as handy as a whiteboard? So in this presentation, I'm really focusing on engagement, but tangential to that, very related to that is the tactility of the physical classroom, the whiteboard, the blackboard, being there in person. And also like what happens when we invite engagement and we're presenting from, as I am, from my office chair, rather than standing in front of the classroom, standing in front of a group of people, students physically there. How do we invite engagement in that capacity? It just feels different. In an online class, students show up when they want, and they're generally able to direct their own learning. They might even skip lectures and read the transcripts, or head straight for things that get graded and forget the rest. And they're maximizing their efficiency, which is great, but my sense is they tend to do these things because maybe they don't perceive the other things as worthwhile. And fair enough, life for distance learners is full with distractions, so it's important for them to be strategic. They're trying to balance work and home life without having a different location where they can go to study. And as educators, we face the same challenge. But my thing is, with students directing their own learning, I don't want the fact that it's my class to be missed by them. I want them to know that I'm there. So the main thing that I want to convey in this presentation is that our job as educators is to add value to the existing designs of the online class. My main argument is a sense of presence is really what makes it feel like a class. Without a sense of presence, students will probably participate mechanically in the classroom. They won't enjoy it as much, and retention rates will suffer. And all this applies typically to asynchronous classes, but depending on the structure and implementation, it might apply very well to live virtual classes as well. I'm a believer in not trying to reinvent the wheel. New tools come along and maybe they seem exciting and maybe they get adopted, maybe they get made obsolete soon, or they get abandoned, or they don't work cross-platform. So my sense is the focus really shouldn't be on the tools. The tools in this case would be applications like Zoom, Screencast-O-Matic, YouTube, Adobe Premiere Pro, and the like. These tools are great. They're very adaptable. They help. They make it possible to bring video into the classroom. And in my experience, they're good enough. We're not quite at VR just yet, virtual reality. So we use what we've got. It's mainly about how and where we use them. So as long as we focus on principles, we won't lose sight when new tools come along. So what are these principles? I mean, for this presentation, the focus is on instructor presence and how to bring that into the virtual classroom. Another key principle is just generally how to facilitate engagement in the classroom. Students are more likely to rate a course favorably when they perceive a higher level of faculty engagement. And the reality is, although online educators are really busy, unfortunately, much of the work that they do doesn't get seen by students. Students' overall educational experience can be said to have these three components: social presence, cognitive presence, teaching presence. Social presence would be things like how they engage with each other, how safe the space is for their personal expression, how and whether it's collaborative. Cognitive presence deals with how information is exchanged, ideas are connected, and how new ideas are applied. And then teaching presence, this deals with curriculum discussion, how the instructor draws out what's most significant. I mean, essentially the way I would put it, students want the classroom to feel real, even when it's virtual. And I mean, to use a model, this is kind of exactly the opposite experience that was common for me in my public school education, where the teacher would sometimes roll in the television cart. I don't know if you've had a similar experience, and show a video or a documentary of arguable relevance in my case. Here is a situation where the instructor can be in that video and thereby establish a sense of their presence in the classroom. So the big picture is one using this model where students have a sense that there's value in the knowledge exchanged via the classroom, that they're not alone, that they have actual classmates, and that their instructor is a real human being who cares about them. a little bit of engagement can go a long way to snap things out of a sleepier passive mode and into a more engaged and interactive one. I mentioned engagement as a principle to strive for, so I'm going to send out a poll I'd like to get your feedback on. I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. Just 3 questions. So just 3 questions. Do you have experience making things like screencasts or slide presentations in a course if you're an educator? Have you recorded videos of you that aren't a screencast, but just actual videos of you? And if yes to either, have you noticed anything positive come from them? Great, yeah. Definitely getting a good sense that there's some strong positives in many cases. And yeah, it's very useful to get a sense for where everybody is on this in terms of what you've experienced, what you've tried. I'm seeing more screencasts than recorded videos. And that might be interesting to bring into the Q&A. So let's move forward here. In terms of strategies, and based on based on my experience and the research that I've found, what works best when using videos is to make short ones, like under 3 minutes. I have made very long ones too. Like I mentioned, I am an English professor, and so I have a tendency to enjoy elaboration. And the online classroom can become very text heavy, so videos add a lot, even when they're very short, even when they're 30 seconds long, just to give an overview of something. Short videos work best for students. They're focused, they get right to the point, and, excuse me, students are more likely to watch shorter videos. I know from personal experience that I've put a lot of effort into longer videos, and they don't always get watched versus the short ones. And another pro here is that shorter videos are, obviously, they generally are less time consuming to make. I'm feeling as well that like longer videos, this is my opinion, longer videos should have a higher production value because a student is watching them for longer. You don't want them to get distracted by audio quality or something like that. Whereas a short video can really be more informal, something like a sketch or a jot almost in terms of a writing analogy here. If you're camera shy, screencasts, in my experience, they work very well. There's also tools that will make a virtual avatar for you, where it can be just your voice, and then you can get a physical representation that's like a cartoon, but it moves along with what you're saying. So it's something, and it's definitely something worth trying. And more regarding the issue of time here. As mentioned, I've worked as an online adjunct for a while, and mainly doing asynchronous courses. And for many years, we didn't really use instructor-created videos very much. In a school where the content isn't created by the instructor is getting paid to facilitate the course. So if it worked then, why should things change now? Some would argue that these improvements have just taken time to implement. And if something like this comes as a new requirement, I mean, it's not a small thing to ask. If, on the other hand, it's something that instructors want to do themselves, or if things are open enough that there can be some creative solutions, one possibility is for instructors to create content that fits with a course that is nevertheless their own and is reusable. I'm curious how people feel about that. Like in my own discipline, I have used videos on topics that are likely to remain relevant in future courses. You know, things like writing a good thesis statement and essay construction, revision, fundamental aspects of it. Okay, so let's get more into strategies here. Let's look at some different applications for video in the classroom. Introduction to the beginning of the term. Obviously, it's really great to get an actual video from your instructor right at the beginning. It creates a sense of actually getting to know them, not just reading something about them. It's also really great to use a brief video at the beginning of a learning module to give an overview. You could do this as an announcement. You could also do a slightly more targeted video within the module itself, depending on how your content management system structures things. By the same token, it's great to use video to recap or summarize things at the end of the module. Another potential use case is something like a brief explainer video attached to an assignment description. Like, how many times have I had a student ask a question about an assignment when really what they needed was someone to rephrase, kind of unpack a bit more what was already stated. And doing that in the video is a proactive approach. It's saying the same thing in a different way and then making it available. And it's helpful because it engages video, audio learners. And yeah, so one other important facet to video creation is that without even having to try it, you're creating some originality. You're bringing your own presence into the class, your own style, ideally a sense of humor, and you're passing along your sense of enthusiasm for your subject matter. So one other possibility here, I have an optional discussion that I use in a course that's for things happening in the world. It's optional. Like, for example, I have a Black Lives Matter discussion. And this works for me very easily because it's an English class, so there's an easy opportunity to engage both the subject matter and the source material that students find on the web, like news articles that they find. And I'm sure there are creative solutions to implement something like this, regardless of discipline. Like an optional forum for sharing study skill tips or other bits that are related to the course, but definitely add value. Generally, my experience is that students don't necessarily contribute much, but they do definitely appreciate the existence of these things. And they don't take too much time from me. I found that it's simple enough to like share a good YouTube video, but students appreciate it a lot more when it's me doing the unpacking of some key concept. My overall experience advice is really let all this be spontaneous and a bit freer than we fear it maybe should be. It's, for me, that spontaneity that really does effectively convey presence. And again, like if you're teaching face-to-face, it's effortless to establish some sense of community, even just by engaging in small talk prior to class. And I would suggest embracing things like this. We tend to omit that in a virtual setting. Things are kind of streamlined and built in a very clear way. We don't want to clutter things up. The other thing here, if you're camera shy, I feel like you're in good company. I would bet that everybody's camera shy. I'm camera shy. And I feel like just take the plunge and it'll get easier with time. And let the focus be on what you want to convey. I've never had a student say, you know, Stephen, I really appreciate your videos, but you really, you don't have a good, you know, I've never been criticized in a sense. It's been appreciated and it's been about what I'm conveying, not necessarily my screen presence or anything like that. So yeah. Other options, work up to it. So I actually started with audio. I started doing audio feedback to students' assignments. And then I did, yeah, like slides or screen captures with voice in it. And then I started doing like a brief in-person intro to what then was a slide or a screen capture. And in my in-person intro, I was giving a brief overview or summary. And then, yeah, ultimately moving more towards just doing spontaneous, short videos. And this is something that works totally well, very naturally with just a smartphone or something like that. My webcam is actually way better on my smartphone than it is on this computer. I have a better webcam that's in the mail, but it's like backordered because with all the move to remote learning, there's like a shortage on webcams. So yeah, moving forward, as mentioned, time is a scarce resource. Not all presence is created equal. So if you want to be strategic about how and when to bring more presence to your class, a sound approach would be to look for those moments where your students are more likely to benefit from general hand-holding or guidance or support. So you could have a bonus Q&A using Zoom, and you can record it for those who aren't able to attend. A frequently asked question in video form. I feel like it's really important to reach out to students just prior to midterm assignments, maybe unpack things as much as possible. And by that same token, it can be really important to reconnect with students after midterm grades are posted. Maybe emphasize some common patterns that you see, some common needs. And again, like you can do this via an announcement or however works best. I want to share like just a sample workflow for creating a video. And this would be probably for a longer video, like a really short video, and it might not be necessary. So it would just be to start with your purpose. Start with a sense of your objective or your outcome. What do you want to accomplish with your video? And it may be more than one thing. An example would be maybe you've heard from a couple of students on an issue and you want to make a video to answer them both and then share it with the whole classroom. The next step will be to draft a script, and it would be like the points that you're trying to address. And then from the script, moving to a slide presentation if you want, and then moving into just practicing rehearsing it. Finally, recording it, and after you record it, doing whatever necessary editing needs to happen, and then uploading it. And then if the content that you create is intended to be reused, then yeah, labeling it in a way that makes sense and then storing it somewhere locally so that it's discoverable when you need it again. And then I wanted to give you just a few. There are a zillion really good tools that are available. Here's some apps and gear that I could recommend or have experience with. Zoom, obviously, lots of features in Zoom, but also Jitsi and Google Meet. They're free and they don't have as many features, but they're adding features all the time. And that would be for conferencing and things like that, live meetings. Then for screen captures, Screencast-O-Matic, Camtasia, VocaScreen works with Linux, and that's free as well. And then the second column there is video editing software. I mean, Adobe Premiere Pro, it's intense. It's, I use probably 0.01% of its total functionality in making videos, but it's really good software. And it's a subscription model, but you do, as an educator, you can get a slight discount on that, which is handy. And if you want to make videos on your smartphone, you can use something like Rush. That's also feature rich, but it all works through your phone. Kden Live also is a Linux app. It's free for editing video. Audacity is fantastic. It's strictly for audio though. And then in the last column, it's more like hardware and gear. Smartphone, obviously, totally capable. External webcam or just the built-in webcam you have on your computer. I've used, DSLR camera as well. It's, going to look more professional, but then with that case, you have separate video and audio tracks, so it's a little bit more involved. A simple headset is going to work for audio in most cases. But then a slight step up from that would be like this Audio Technica 2020. It's a USB mic, so it doesn't require any other special gear. It's not too expensive, but it's a step up from like the built-in mic. And then this last bit there, what is that? It's room treatment for acoustic stuff. I've done audiobook recording work and things like that, so I built a little vocal booth and I researched this stuff and kind of geeked out on it. If you're really interested in audio quality, what matters a lot is actually room treatment. Microphone matters, but room treatment matters a lot. So Russell or Owens Corning 703, if you put that as acoustic panels in the room, it deadens the sound and it makes things sound a lot better. So a wide variety of suggestions there. And then moving to just some final reflection questions that I have, just wanting to reflect a bit and drive home the notion that video is a way for instructors to make it visible to students that they care and that they're present. Reflection. What are some creative ways that I show up to class as I might in a physical classroom? And again, in a physical classroom, it's easy to get inspired by those serendipitous conversations that happen just prior to class or something that sparks randomly. So what about doing a video announcement, saying something about recent events, relating that to something in the course? And because this is a new thing for some people, or it's something that we're having to do more than we have in the past, it's good to get connected with what drives you. Your motivating forces here, like why do video? Why really embrace video? Are you doing it because you have to, or are you doing it because you really want to? What do you enjoy most about teaching? And how are you able to accomplish that in a way that basically works with the way that your course is designed and also conveys more of your presence? What's the ideal class environment that you would like to help create? And it may be that we need to learn some more skills. Maybe we need to learn different software tools to make that happen. And that's the sum of things from my end. And I would transition here to the Q&A if you guys have questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that presentation. We do have some questions, and at this point, if anyone has any other questions, please put those into the Q&A box and we will get to them. The first question, somebody noticed the white screen behind you and was wondering what you use that for, if you're using it for your classes.
I mean, I use it for presentations, yeah. And I also just use it as a background. So I've done some videos where like, I just try experimenting with different approaches, and I made a gradual transition from doing like, okay, so there's PowerPoint that I could do stuff with, but then Premiere Pro has the ability to kind of make slides, and you can use title cards to add text. And so I just use that as a white background to bring in, and it's like a blank slate to put text on. Basically just experimenting with things, and I wanted a nice monolithic background.
When you first started teaching online, what was something you thought would work well for student engagement but found was not what you expected?
Okay, that's one I have to sit and think with. I don't know that I have an answer to that. I guess maybe it's been too long. If you can give me more context, just a tool that once I thought worked, it turned out didn't work. I guess what I was speaking to there is general trend. I could even speak to the way that it happens with CMSs, where we used something called WebCT, and that got phased into Blackboard, and then Blackboard isn't always used very often. So we're just changing the way that we're changing platforms, and actually even like there's some reason there's a move away from Skype, as well, and we're just moving toward one thing or another, and like it's because, like, say, Zoom has breakout feature, and that's really fantastic, and that functionality I haven't found in other applications. So for me, it's often just as much about when there is a new feature, that then unfortunately it's the side effect that we do abandon the other one that worked in the past.
Thank you so much. In the field of mathematics, I have found it very difficult to create short videos. What suggestions do you have?
I wish I had math relevant suggestions.
I'm sure we have a lot of attendees here who are also in math. If you would like to share your suggestions in the Q&A, I'd be happy to read those out to better answer Professor Ayers' question.
Yeah, I wish I could speak to that. I mean, I think the general strategy that I focus on is finding some sort of a way of summing things up, or reframing them. And if they're presented in one way via the written materials, if I can just take a slightly different angle on the way they're presenting it through video, then that's, for me, a way of really adding value. So saying the same thing a different way often is all that it takes to really open things up for people and help them retain the information.
Thank you so much for that insight. I see the rationale for shorter videos, but is there a point at which there are too many videos to click through and it would be better to do fewer, slightly longer videos?
That's a great question. The online classroom can really become like a cluttered place very quickly, especially the announcements thing. Like, and then I've experimented with different approaches, and the announcements are in some way too handy for sharing information, because then it becomes something that students, there are so many announcements that they might just skim, they don't really delve into. So I feel like there's some combination that needs to happen of creating discussion forums, nesting the videos in the actual content if possible. Like Canvas makes this pretty easy. Schoology as well can make it pretty easy. So it's like having the videos there right next to the other material in the actual module. That way it's not just like videos. Absolutely.
Awesome. Professor Regis asked, what software program did you use for today's presentation? We are on Zoom webinars. That's what we are using. It's not a free account like Zoom meeting is. Where do you find avatars to use in videos?
I haven't actually done this, but I've seen there's a lot of options, and that's why I mentioned like Voki is one that I tried, but I haven't actually used it in the classroom. And so like I think that there's, if you're sort of searching around for it, I think like cartoons might be a term, or avatar, but it's essentially the functionality that you're searching for is something that takes something that's just audio and it gives you a way of having something that's moving along with it.
Thank you. I'm seeing in the chat a lot of people like using Bitmoji for avatars in their videos and slides, and even for GIFs. So that's a super fun way to have an avatar. I have created videos in which I had no errors and videos with errors. I found that students like the latter. They feel it's more real. What are your thoughts?
Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, I know that that's one of my main things causes for feeling nervous is I'm going to make a mistake or things like that. And that's really interesting feedback to get. I haven't heard anything like that specifically from students, but I find that totally like something that I feel like most students probably feel, in the sense of, and what a relief that is basically for feeling nervous is actually it's appreciated when it's just you. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to say things perfectly. You can find your way to it. You can make mistakes. I'm curious actually what you mean by mistakes, whether you mean like saying the wrong word or whether you mean like facing the wrong direction.
I'm sure there's a difference there. Circling back to the math instructor's question, we've gotten a few responses about that. Professor King says our dual credit math instructors chunk concepts and create skill-based videos to demonstrate step by step. That's a good idea. Professor Moore, in my math and stats courses, I break each section into topics instead of by section. So if, for example, I'm covering logarithmic or exponential equations, there may be a short video for each type, like 5 to 15 minutes, but there are some sections I can't break. Thank you for sharing, guys. Another question, do you ever use computer pens or styluses for drawing diagrams and highlighting presentation points? If so, what kind?
This is a touch screen, but I haven't taken advantage of it, and it would work I think just fine for things like, you know, circling things on an essay or things like that. But I use different functionality, basically just highlighting using the mouse instead of actually circling or pointing at something. But I mean, so this is a Dell laptop with a touch screen. I think the people are going to probably have a lot of positive suggestions from using iPads in that capacity, for sure.
Awesome. Is there a way to create discussion between students during a virtual session? In a live class, I would break the class into groups and have them work on an answer to a question I posed. Can something like this be done virtually?
So that the sense of like having live meetings. Can you actually say that again so that I understand?
Yeah.
Breakout rooms.
I think that was the main idea of the question. The professor is wondering if there's a way to break the class into groups and have them work on something live in a virtual setting.
Zoom breakout rooms feature is great for that. You assign each person. So if they're all logged in at the same time via the Zoom class, then the Zoom makes it pretty straightforward as the host to select who goes to which group, and then they get sent off to their different groups. And then when they end the breakout, whether it's timed or whatever, or you decide to end the breakout, then they all get deposited back into the main classroom. It's fairly streamlined. I find that it works really well.
Do you caption your own videos?
I have found that, let's see, what is it? Screencast-O-Matic actually has a really handy way of doing that. I mean, it's not perfect with understanding each word perfectly, but it's really great because you simply upload the video and then the timing is all there, and you can go back through and read what it's captioned and then just make the necessary corrections there in the text.
Yeah, I know YouTube does something similar as well. And speaking of YouTube, do you have a comment about creating a YouTube channel for class videos?
I mean, I personally think it's a great idea. It's something that I am beginning to adopt, and I just feel like it's really exciting, and I personally would want more to see more of that from people. I think it's a really beautiful thing to do because we have that ability to make content that's our own and then also to share it within the classroom. So I think it's great. And if students are interested, then they can actually delve deeper just into the material that you have that's freely available. And yeah, it makes it available to people in the class, which is kind of awesome as well. Or you can make it private as needed.
Thank you. What learning management system does your college use?
University of Maryland uses their own, it's a proprietary system, so I haven't seen it exactly anything quite like it anywhere else. I would say it's most similar to Canvas, and Canvas is seems to be the main player these days.
How does one embed the video within the class?
Okay, yeah, specific question depends on what CMS you're using. Like Canvas has a lot of different ways of doing it. Luckily, there's even just a way of you just upload it. You can also kind of bring it into Canvas, or you can embed it if it's hosted somewhere else. So like there are add-ons to Canvas, like a YouTube add-on or a Vimeo add-on or a Screencast-O-Matic add-on. So then in those cases, the video is actually hosted on YouTube or it's hosted on Screencast-O-Matic, and then it's basically a matter of facilitating a link between the two, which it's just there when you're adding new content on the little, it's a little icon basically for add upload video, or I forget what the term is exactly, but then there's the icon for actually YouTube video or Screencast-O-Matic.
Thank you. How do you foster student engagement during your online classes? I know we already talked about breakout rooms, but anything else?
Well, I mean, in my classes, it's peer review, and so that's largely where it comes up. And so it's a matter of me coming in and conveying the values of peer review and giving them the tools that they need to facilitate that. And then because it's asynchronous, the peer review, it happens through discussion. So it's a matter of me helping facilitate that. That's the main and most common way that student-to-student interaction happens in my class.
Thank you. Do you feel that more video is better for online and hybrid courses?
I think for me, yeah, my sense is it's just important to be strategic. More video might actually be problematic, especially because it's time constraint, not only obviously on the instructor to create the video, but you have to be sensitive to the time constraints faced by students. And there are like active reading strategies where they can quickly get through material as needed, versus if it's in a video, it's a lot harder for them to get the information if they're really feeling a crunch. So I guess my sense is I would want to take a strategy where there's not a whole ton of video, but really ideally it's like a Goldilocks situation, or just enough, like coming in not to convey all the information, but really to bring a sense of presence and to come in at those moments where it's most needed, at introductions, around midterms, when many students are facing a situation, or just when you're feeling inspired.
Thank you. Where do you store your videos?
I mean, I have them in different places. I have some videos that are on Screencast-O-Matic. I have some videos that are on YouTube, some that are public and some that are private on YouTube. And then I have others that I have just locally that I upload directly. And those are mainly the ones that are spontaneously made, those kinds of videos. So there are different use cases, and I have not arrived at like one perfect organizational structure for that. Because I'm still like experimenting with the different platforms and how to best use them. I lean towards YouTube personally.
What are your views on professors recording entire lectures?
I guess it really depends on the course and how it's designed. Yeah. I can definitely see the value in recording a lecture. But I think, as I mentioned, if this is an asynchronous class, I want the material to be able to be consumed by the student in more than one way. And so if it's there in a lecture, I think that's fantastic, as long as it's also there and available in other ways. So written or with a transcript and things like that.
Oh, I love this question. Do you ever create a black and white video for a desired or dramatic effect?
I haven't done that. No, maybe I will.
That
I think
sounds
it's great.
really fun. I love that.
Yeah.
What software should I use to record an entire lecture for an online or hybrid course?
Mhm. So you mean like an in-person, like recording yourself on a lecture? I guess it really depends on what hardware you have. Like if you have a really great camera, then I would use the camera because it's got the best video quality. In which case, you'd also need a mic, and I'd be sensitive to the. As I mentioned, I feel like higher production values are more important for longer videos, just because of like attention fatigue, listening fatigue, things like that. So I would be more interested in like room treatment, audio quality, maybe having a lapel mic or something like that. And with that said, that's the audio component, but the video component, plenty of smartphones are good enough video quality wise for something like that. And then it's a matter, yes, of using software like Adobe Premiere Pro. That would be my recommendation. Unless you're on Linux, in which case Kden Live is really great and it's free.
Thanks so much. Do you think that using PowerPoint obviates creating separate videos since with the instructor being seen on an insert as they explain the slides?
What was the first part of that question?
Do you think that using PowerPoint obviates creating separate videos?
I don't feel like it's necessary, but I feel like there's value in having that little picture of you there alongside it. I think that that it can go either way, and honestly, a lot can come through in just the voice being there, the audio being there. But you know, if it's possible based on the software that you're using, I think it's definitely valuable to have, you know, just your video, and especially if you have something like Zoom, where you can record both a screen capture and your webcam. I say, why not? Yeah.
Awesome. And they clarified they meant PowerPoint 2019, not previous versions in that question. So
I've started just using Google Slides, to personal preference. But, you know, both are good.
oh, because the new version has video embedded.
Ah, okay.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Professor Wolfert. Let's see. Are students able to see that screen behind you clearly when you present? I am a math teacher and must be able to write on a whiteboard and or use an Elma while presenting on Teams or Zoom.
I also have a whiteboard, and so it's elsewhere in the room, and so I just position my laptop there, so that whiteboards are tricky because they pick up glare, and so I would actually want to experiment with actually a blackboard, perhaps, because of the matte finish on a blackboard. Lighting is the trick with that, because of a whiteboard is so glossy, it's reflective, it's hard to see. But something like, yeah, making a blackboard, or like they make chalkboard paint, something like that could be really interesting to try.
Thank you. All right, we're almost running out of time, so we'll take a few more questions. My apologies to anyone who doesn't have theirs answered. What is your advice for someone who has not used video before?
I would say focus on like feeling that connection to students, because it's going to be there even though it's virtual and it's going to feel imaginary at the time that you're creating the video. It's going to eventually happen. So I would say focus on your students, focus on the value of what you want to impart. Like I could say, you know, just don't worry about it. Get out of the way. It's easy, you know. But it's I can totally relate to that sense of feeling overwhelmed by it and very nervous about it. And that's what helps for me is really like, hey, this is actually, it's not just me awkwardly in front of a camera. There's a purpose to this. It's some student is going to be on the other end of this video, and it's not about me making mistakes. It's about what I'm able to bring to them, how I unpack things for them. So that's where I try to direct my focus, and I found that really helpful.
Thank you. So Professor Young shared with us a link for apps to, like a list of apps that you can make an avatar out of yourself. I'm going to send that in the chat in case people are interested in seeing it. But thank you for sharing, Professor Young. Cool. Will Hawk save and make the Q&A responses available? I definitely can, and I'll send that out with the recording. Have you found a method for completing a handwritten worksheet or handout with students online?
A handwritten, like completing a handwritten worksheet or a handout. I guess I don't understand. So it's like getting into doing something by hand, you mean?
Professor Bowers, would you like to clarify? We can come back to yours. Another question, when recording a live tutorial session, do you ever have to limit the amount of student questions or interaction for the sake of time?
Yeah. But like, that's always the gift. Like, that's one of those problems that you love having, is too much student interaction. So just bringing it back. That's one of the beautiful things about having the interaction is, yes, it's necessary, feeling like how time is flowing for sure. But I'd say that's one of those that I really enjoy.
Awesome, thank you. How does one do a PowerPoint in a presentation as you did in this presentation? So I can explain that, or you, Professor Weber, whatever your preference.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so we're in Zoom right now. Obviously, this is live. So when we have somebody sharing their screen, they make their PowerPoint, you push the share screen button and it just pulls up just like that in presentation mode. It's very easy to do and works really well. Let's see. Oh, someone had a suggestion about rigging a phone or computer to capture you filling out a handout. Oh no, that was Professor Bowers asking. That was the follow-up to that question.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, that sounds like a good suggestion.
Awesome. Let's find. A lot of people were sharing suggestions of other alternatives to Zoom and other resources, which is awesome. I'll definitely be sure to include those with the Q&A answers in the follow-up. I love seeing all these resources. Someone asked how we are putting our inserts on top of the PowerPoint slides. That's something that Zoom does when you share your screen. They just put the video up like that. Let's see, are there any more? Who owns your recordings, you or the university?
I suppose for everyone that would depend on the fine print of whatever your contract says. But for me, I mean, I own my content, so I'm choosing to share my content as if I were sharing any other content. Like, it was like, it's an English class, so I might share a link to a news article or something like that. So in my case, yeah, I own my content, but depending on where each word, I don't know, I suppose they might have different rules.
All right, thank you so much. I think we're going to end it there as it's been almost an hour. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And thank you so much, Professor Weber, for your presentation and those insightful Q&A answers. If anyone has any questions that we didn't get to today or any following up, please direct them to us at marketing@hawkslearning.com. We will be emailing you a link to view this webinar on demand, as well as the Q&A resources that we discussed. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great rest of their weekend.
Thanks.